All right, stick with me. You and I are about to watch the strongest healer on the continent. In the final war against the Calamity, the hunters couldn't beat the dragons, but they had will. With him there, nobody died on the battlefield. No matter how brutal the injuries got, he saved them. But honestly, that became a total curse. His allies got completely sick of surviving, being yanked back from death, stitched up, and tossed right back into the meat grinder on repeat, way worse than just dying in battle. So they turned on the exact guy keeping them alive. The general shoved a sword right through Will's shoulder. "Welcome to real suffering," he told him. And that was it, game over. With zero morale left, the army instantly crumbled, and those dragons absolutely did not leave any survivors. We'll learn the hard way that even peak healers can't survive getting eaten by a dragon. But hey, did you really think his story ends there? Boom, Will wakes up 5 years in the past, Apocalypse memories totally intact. He knows exactly what goes down, and this time around, he is absolutely done hiding in the back as a medic. He is going to learn how to throw down and get into the offensive magic academy. No more relying on other people to protect the ones he cares about. Then he spots the enrollment form sitting right on the table. Seeing that letter proves it, he actually traveled back in time. Will opens the door, year 416 of the Salsario calendar, exactly 1 week before the Hillig Academy enrollment from 5 years ago. Crazy, considering he thought that dragon ended him. He has no clue how this happened, but if his final wish actually came true, he knows exactly what his next move has to be. He is enrolling at Schwarz, the top-tier offensive magic academy, even though literally everyone knows healers cannot use attack magic. Now pay close attention here. Will is about to completely shatter that rule. Sure, it won't be easy, but he still has all those future memories and maxed out healing skills. By using his entire arsenal, he can rewrite the future. This time, he fights on the front lines, and Schwarz is straight up the best battle magic school on Earth. Rumor has it their elite program turns any mage into a total frontline beast. An old friend from his past life graduated there, but the academy keeps its techniques heavily guarded. Only official students get access. Plus, there is zero record of a healer ever getting into Schwarz before. So how does he bypass the rules? Honestly, it usually comes down to cash. Thanks to the school's insane reputation, rich nobles constantly pump money into it. If only he could have brought his future bank account with him. Nope, his healer pay was great, but the real issue right now, time is running out. Even taking extra shifts, he can't earn enough before enrollment. Suddenly, a voice calls out. Will recognizes it instantly. It is his sister. He really is in the past, and she is actually alive. She asks if his stomach hurts. Will just shakes his head, blaming it on dust in his eye. She just laughs and tells him to have a great day. Looking at her, Will vows to stop the tragedy that took her last time. His healing magic will work. He is going to save everyone he lost before. He mentions he figured something out, which immediately makes his sister super curious about his plans. See, the Magic Academy Alliance controlled all the kingdom's schools and basically ran all magical education, but back during this specific time period. The Alliance president was also the head director of Schwarz Academy, except there was a stretch where he completely ghosted all the official meetings. Cut to the director's mansion that same day. He is standing by a bed. His granddaughter is out cold, dripping with sweat. He touches her face, whispering her name, Marie. He mutters that another healer failed today, but promises he will find someone who can fix this. He begs her to just hang in there a little bit longer. So yeah, that is why the big boss vanished. He was totally obsessed with trying to keep his sick granddaughter alive. You and I both know how these tragic timelines usually go. In his past life, the healing magic of this era failed and she passed away. But suddenly, a kid climbs right through the window and asks to take the job. The director instantly recognizes him. It is Will, the Hillig scholarship kid. His insane talent for healing magic is already famous across the whole alliance. Though honestly, nobody expected this kid to be a window-climbing ninja. Will just awkwardly scratches his head and lets out a laugh. Will realizes his old self would never pull a stunt like this. Dying really does make a guy fearless. Anyway, the clock is totally ticking. Time is running out for the girl, and Will knows he can save her. The director demands to know his real motive. Will brushes it off, saying they can negotiate after he treats her. Her illness is moving way faster than expected, The two of them lock eyes in a tense stare-down. Finally, the old man caves and tells Will to prove himself. Will takes a seat next to the girl, looking super focused and just a little bit tense. He realizes the head of a battle magic school has totally terrifying eyes, the exact kind of glare that screams he will end you for one tiny mistake. Still, Will takes a deep breath, grabs her hand, and channels his magic. Sure, his raw mana reset when he time traveled, but those high-level formulas, memorized. The cure for Zora's illness will not even be invented for another 2 years, but Future will already mastered it. Slowly, the sick girl opens her eyes. Letting out a massive sigh, Will mutters a quick thank God. Flashing a warm smile, he tells her that her energy is totally wiped and she needs to sleep. Getting a little flustered, she nods along. The director rushes in, asking if Marie is actually all right. She smiles, admitting she hasn't felt this healthy in forever. The tough old guy practically bursts into tears right there. Shaking, he says he understands and that a massive weight has just been lifted off his chest. Moving to the next room, the grateful director seriously thanks Will. He offers to grant literally any favor he wants. Will just grins, saying his request is actually pretty simple. Like the old man just witnessed, his healing is absolutely max tier. He has nothing left to learn there, which is exactly why he wants a spot at Schwarz Academy. The director is stunned. He asks why Will would waste god-tier healing talent at a battle school, warning him about how crazy hard that path will be. Will does not even blink. The director just stares deep into the kid's eyes. Trust me, you and I are going to love what happens next. The director smiles, shakes Will's hand, and promises to handle everything. Meanwhile, another guy mutters about that old fox. All right, stick with me here. You and I are about to watch someone do something completely reckless when you'd least expect it. Can a soft healer like Will even survive the hardcore curriculum here? Well, on entrance ceremony day, the director gives his big speech to everyone. Schwarz Academy is a boarding school built entirely around hardcore offensive magic. Massive grounds, tons of training fields, research labs, and a huge library, plus the kingdom backs it directly. There is literally no better place to learn attack magic, and absolutely no healer has ever enrolled. But if Will studies here, he can become a true combat mage. Thinking about his past, he knows this place will change his entire destiny. Classes start and Will instantly hits a wall. The professor tells him to begin. Will focuses, conjures up a fire spell in his palm, and fires, but only pathetic smoke poofs out. Another total failure. The professor snaps, saying Will is banned from class until he can actually hit a target. He tells him to go practice outside. Will asks if he could at least get some pointers. How do you practice something you don't even know? The professor just calls teaching him a waste. Will begs to just read theory in the library. Nope. The professor brutally shoots him down. No healer books allowed. Now watch closely because this is where it gets nasty. A blonde student fires a spell right at him. Will hits the dirt while the guy laughs at him. This is an attack academy, man. Weaklings who can't dodge basic strikes don't belong here. Basically, taking the hit was Will's own fault. The professor totally agrees, telling Will to go cry back to the healer school. The blonde smirks, mocking that at least healers will comfort his feelings. Will gets up, his face full of absolute rage. Later, sitting outside alone, reality hits Will hard. Zero progress in offensive magic. He always knew this would be an uphill battle. Healing and attacking use totally different power sources. Mages convert mana using specific formulas, and your mana type decides your skills. Dynamic mana makes fire and explosions. Healers only have static mana, but Schwarz was famous for building elite battle mages from scratch. There had to be a secret trick. If he could just turn static into dynamic mana, he'd crush the rest. The issue, getting into class, was literally impossible. Students and teachers treated healers like garbage, but he refused to back down. His personal hero started with basically 0 mana and leveled up right here at Schwarz. This wasn't a mistake. But struggling blindly wouldn't work. He wasn't allowed in the library, so maybe sneaking in was his only shot right now. Suddenly, a voice asks what he's doing out so late. Will stammers an apology, then freezes when he recognizes her. She steps close, looks him up and down, then locks eyes. Lady Veronica, just seeing her hits him like a ton of bricks. I know what you're thinking. Wait, a past life? Yep, They actually fought side by side on the battlefield until the bitter end. Her magic sword was legendary, slicing through literally anything. Meeting her again was insane. Then he spots the blade right in her hand. Veronica says she found a sketchy student sneaking around, so obviously she's on guard. She demands to know if he's plotting something or just studying. Will reads the room instantly. Veronica is on a whole different level of power. One attack and he is toast. He swears he's just eager. She shades the sword. He calls her by name. She nods but asks if that's how you talk to a professor. Will is totally shocked by this. She explains she skipped grades and became a teacher this very year. Honestly, with her insane skills, makes sense. Will sees a golden opportunity. He immediately asks how he can sign up for her specific class. Veronica admits she doesn't actually have a class yet. Since she skipped grades, she barely attends regular lectures. Right now, she's just a teaching assistant for questions. The idea is that younger students might feel less intimidated by her. But for some reason, nobody ever asks her a thing. Perfect setup. Will asks how a healer can learn offensive magic. Veronica mentions she felt something weird with his mana, so he's the famous new guy everyone's been gossiping about. A healer trying to attack is super rare, but if there's a trick to dynamic mana, she can teach it. Will is pumped. But she shuts him down. Using offensive magic is physically impossible with his massive static mana. Even if he created dynamic mana, it would instantly melt into the static energy. No formula in the world could fix it. Will straight up asks if there is truly zero hope for a healer. She says no, crushing right, but he refuses to quit. If a method doesn't exist, he'll just have to invent it. He thanks her and promises to figure it out. But Veronica isn't finished. Sure, healers can't use regular offensive magic, but there is still a way to become a battle mage. Will is totally confused. She simply points at her sword, swing this, and enemies go down. Then she points at a wooden chair nearby. It's meant for sitting, sure, but throw it at a guy, he's getting knocked out. Nobody looks at a chair as a weapon. It's all about who is holding the item, and the same rule applies to hands. She lightly taps him, catching Will off guard. Then she flicks his forehead hard. So what do you and I take from this? Application is absolutely everything. Stick with me here. Will finally gets it, depending on how you use it. Literally anything can be a weapon, even healing magic. Veronica nods to confirm it. Honestly, he is kicking himself right now. Why had he literally never thought of doing that before? She explains that this is just how people are wired. Battle mages don't care about healing, and healers definitely stay away from actual combat. But our guy is built totally different. Just stepping foot into an offensive magic academy makes him a complete weirdo, and honestly, his mana isn't strictly for healing anymore. Will thinks his regression might have hidden that fact. Veronica tells him to wake up. To fully embrace his inner rage. Do that, and his healing spells will absolutely obliterate people. Cut to the training grounds the next day. Will is still obsessing over Veronica's advice. Her weird analogy actually blew his mind. He wonders why she didn't even flinch at a healer using totally offensive magic. Plus, she had a whole theory ready to go. Suddenly, the instructor interrupts his daydreaming. Because the class has an odd head count, Will is forced into today's sparring matches. The fact he can't use attack magic, total skill issue. Getting totally crushed is his own fault. The matchups are locked in. Will's opponent, yeah, this is an obvious setup. Now watch closely. Omen comes from a snobby noble family surrounded by his annoying goons. But trust me, Opulpus is a genuine battle mage. Opus yells that healing magic cannot fix bruised egos, promising Will is gonna run home crying after getting completely wrecked. Will finds this dude so incredibly annoying. In his past life, he would have brushed it off. Today, this punk is really getting under his skin. He wants to test out Veronica's theory and dish out some payback. He stares Opulpus down and refuses to surrender. Will firmly states he is not backing down, but throws out a crazy bet. If he loses, he will admit he has zero talent and drop out of Schwarz completely. The instructor agrees. Will continues, if he actually wins, he wants full permission to attend regular classes. The teacher asks what kind of absolute joke this is. Alpus screams that this pathetic weakling is just clinging to total delusions. He says breaking him makes it more fun. The instructor shuts it down quickly. Impossible hypotheticals are just a waste of time. They take their positions. He raises his hand, starting the match. Alpus instantly summons several floating daggers. He flexes his insane blade creation magic. Countless swords pop out of thin air, ready to skewer a guy without any basic attack spells. Will locks in immediately. Channeling his healing magic, he opens his eyes and starts effortlessly dodging the blades left and right. Opus is completely stunned. Will thinks fast while moving. His healing magic's true core is manipulating life itself, boosting his body's natural recovery to max levels. But healing isn't his only trick. If he shifts that power into pure offense. Opus yells at him to stop acting cocky. I know what you're thinking, payback time. Will activates physical reinforcement, grabbing a blade midair to smash them all. The swords freeze midair before crashing to the ground. This is exactly what our boy needed. Holding the dagger out, he casually says he's just borrowing it. He's locked in. The whole crowd is completely mind blown. Someone whispers, asking if that was an attack spell. Will smirks, nope, just weaponized healing magic. Apparently nobody else can tell the difference. Opulpus is absolutely losing his mind. He screams this is a joke and summons way more blades. A battle mage cannot lose to a healer. Will just pushes forward, smoothly deflecting every single blade. Opus gets insanely frustrated. Forget quantity, he yells. Time to make these swords way bigger. Let's see him dodge this. Will easily blocks it with his dagger. Opus screams, pushing harder. He adds crazy spin, throwing everything at him. Will simply cranks up his physical reinforcement and blocks the strike. Alpus yells that it's absolutely impossible. I'll just heal myself later. Will stares him down. Forgive me. He sweeps the dagger. A massive sand wall erupts, catching them both off guard. The instructor steps in. That sand is his. He orders them to stand down, mentioning the other matches. Will stares coldly at Alpus on the floor, asking to join regular classes now. Gritting his teeth, Alpus tells him to do whatever he wants. Will thanks him. Walking away, he processes that rush. That right there was his own attack magic. And it worked beautifully. He just clapped a top-tier battle mage his own age. Big shout out to Professor Veronica. A healer can absolutely become a battle mage. He's becoming a battle mage. He checks the flag. Opulpus tells the teacher this class accident could cause problems. He complains he doesn't want to report this mess to his rich dad, and the teacher better understand that. The teacher nervously agrees. They can't let a healer act cocky. Inside the classroom, Will is pumped to finally attend normally. He wants to master all offensive magic. The teacher enters, shoots Will a quick look, and faces the class. He announces today's lesson is magic tool creation. Time to build ice bombs. He passes out materials, telling them to infuse mana while following instructions. Will recognizes this setup. The Healer Academy had a similar class, except they only crafted potions and basic healing items. It makes sense they build weapons here. They expect everyone to pump in aggressive mana, but for crafting magical tools. The mana type doesn't matter much, it's mostly about the raw materials. He figures he can easily ace this class. He mixes the materials. The stone glows weirdly, so Will chucks it. Trust me, you and I gotta see the fallout. Stick with me, we're about to watch the wildest Academy underdog story. Boom, Will is flat on his back, surrounded by ice spikes, staring at the ceiling. The professor calls him out immediately. What exactly is he doing? Will tries to explain that the magic stone literally activated before he even pumped mana into it. The professor doesn't care. Zero excuses allowed. He docks Will's grade right there, while the rest of the class snickers from the back rows. Alulpus is laughing too, giving Will this weird, shady look. Will glares right back. Cut to the next class on magical creatures, where a literal salamander sits before him. The professor makes a snarky comment about low-grade students needing to sit up front and pay attention. Will barely even has a second to process how close he is before the beast spits straight fire at him. He blocks it with a pot. The professor demands to know why he has a cauldron. Will says it was totally necessary. They confiscate it anyway, so that is how they want to play this game, Will thinks. They let him attend classes, sure, but they definitely don't plan on letting him actually learn a single thing. Meanwhile, a girl is watching him, looking totally nervous. The bullying doesn't stop. The professor keeps calling on Will for super advanced questions about material he has never even seen. Later, outside. Someone snitches that Will was causing trouble, meaning he gets his dinner completely cut. Tough break. Back in his dorm room, Will flops onto his bed, staring up. The entire academy is stacked against him, and they are not letting up. He has a massive mountain of problems to deal with. But he is actually making progress. He refuses to let some petty bullies stop him. Plus, he just won his very first real hands-on fight. Becoming a battle mage is totally within his reach. He also scored a textbook and needs to study up. But the very next day, Will shows up to his classroom and it is completely empty, not a single soul. Now here is where things get really interesting. Watch closely. Class time hits, zero professor. The only other person is that nervous girl. Yep, the room changed and nobody told them. Will walks over and casually breaks the ice. He asks if she thinks the class got moved on them. She sighs and says she was thinking the exact same thing. She adds that since she is stuck here with Will, the guy literally everyone at the academy hates, she figures it was a setup from the start. We are basically on the same side, she mutters. Hated outcasts belong together. Ouch. Will thinks that is a bit harsh, but she sounds way too depressed to be joking. Hey, a friend is a friend. He smiles and introduces himself. She formally replies that the pleasure is all hers, introducing herself as Erica Glenn. Will happily drops that she is his first friend here. Erica bluntly says that makes total sense. He skips class and worst of all in their eyes, he is just a healer. Around here, healers equal weaklings. She admits that even though she is a battle mage who attends every single lecture, she is completely friendless too. We'll choose on that for a second. Her blunt attitude aside, the healer hate is super real in his past life. He was up way too fast to deal with this garbage. But at an academy built around throwing fireballs and lightning, the bias against healers is absolutely massive. So surviving here means fighting the system. Erica sighs, asking why he even bothered coming to Schwarz. Will fires back, being a healer is zero excuse to dodge a fight. Erica is genuinely stunned. Will casually adds he has his own reasons, then flips the question to her. Erica explains she comes from a tiny noble family out in the boonies. They had 0 boys, so her parents were completely freaking out about the family bloodline dying. They figured if she could become a super famous mage, she could step up as the head of the house. Will nods. Getting that Schwarz Academy diploma would definitely make that dream a reality. But Erica admits her offensive magic is literal trash. That is why she has 0 friends. Classes are pure torture for her, but hey, now she has a buddy. She basically says that hanging with Will, an even bigger loser than her, makes her feel way better about her trash grades. Will smirks, warning her that things might not go how she thinks. Erica is super confused. What does that mean? Will just laughs, saying step 1 is actually finding their missing classroom. Erica trails right behind him. They finally bust into the new room. The professor glares, coldly snapping that they are late and the lesson started forever ago. Will casually apologizes, saying nobody told them about the swap. The professor could not care less about excuses and calls Will out to the front. He orders him to solve the insane magic formula on the board. Erica is fuming, they just walked in, plus Will has basically 0 classroom experience so far. You and I both know what is coming, right? The professor smirks, solve it, and they are clear but fail, and he loses massive points. Alulpus loudly jokes that Will is getting expelled today. Completely unfazed, Will grabs the chalk. He just starts writing. The entire room goes dead silent, everyone eagerly waiting for him to bomb it. But Will just finishes, turns around with a perfectly flawless magic circle, and asks how it looks. The professor is totally mind-blown. It is 100% correct. He stammers, telling Will to sit. Alulpus literally gasps in pure shock. Erica's brain is short-circuiting. Will just casually strolls back to his desk, smiling like an absolute boss. The second class ends, Erica chases him down. How the heck did he do that? Will shrugs, saying it looked super complicated. But it was honestly just a basic application from the textbook he studied last night. Erica is stunned. Wait, he read that massive book entirely on his own. Will nods, he binge-read the whole thing yesterday. He praises the Schwarz textbook for being totally flawless, covering every single thing from basic theory to advanced moves. 0 filler, exactly what a top-tier magic academy should provide. Just reading it gave him everything he needed. Plus, he has always been a complete nerd for theory. And his past life logic totally gave him a cheat code for understanding offensive spells. He pulled an all-nighter, but hey, he had a blast doing it. Erica's jaw practically hits the floor. That book is way too dense to learn solo. She literally thought Will was the biggest loser in the whole school. If he is actually a genius, what does that make her? She begs him not to ditch her now. Will kindly pats her shoulder. No worries, he will tutor her through it. They are friends now, right? Erica almost cries thanking him. Internally, Will admits he definitely did not come to Schwarz to play buddy-buddy. But she opens new doors, so he demands a favor in return. Trust me, you and I are gonna want to see what happens next. Let's dive in. His next hurdle is general offensive magic, the exact reason he kept failing and getting kicked out before. He could handle himself now, even beating Ulpus, but standard attack spells, still way out of his league. But he had a plan and he needed her help. He explained the difference. Standard attack magic uses preset formulas, structured and ready for anyone to learn. Unique magic, on the other hand, that's custom built inside the user. It only works for that specific person. Schwarz had totally separate classes for both. With unique magic, there's no single right answer, so he could totally slide by using his aggressive healing skills. But for standard offensive magic, no spell cast means an instant fail. The professor made that crystal clear. Will might have aced the written test, but the practical exam was a whole different beast. No attack spell, instant fail. The actual task was super simple. Just hit the dummy with a basic fireball. Fail that, and he could kiss graduating goodbye. Plus, the professor totally suspected Will just used healing magic in the mock battle. And yeah, getting faster after healing yourself makes sense, but pulling off standard attack magic, that was a totally different ball game. He figured an incompetent kid like Will should just drop the class, but then the professor froze. Will was smirking, literal fire in his palm. Will felt pretty smug. The professor was totally clueless. See, yesterday, when he was hanging out with Erica, Will asked her to shoot a basic fireball spell. He trapped that spell inside a salamander tail, hid the tail in his hand, and constantly healed his own skin so he wouldn't burn. Erica was mind blown, wondering how a healer pulled that off and who he really was. Right before firing it off, Will just used his healing magic to trigger the stored flame charge inside that hidden tail. Now watch closely, this is brilliant. To anyone standing around, it looked exactly like he just conjured a fireball from scratch. The shot flew dead straight, completely scorching the training dummy. Will gave the professor this chill smile and asked for his grade. The professor just stared. That was 100% a standard spell's flame. Maybe the kid actually learned it. Will passed, heading back to the line. Erica's jaw practically hit the floor. Ulpus was grinding his teeth. Later in the classroom, Ulpus demanded answers. What just happened? The professor wanted to know too. But Opulpus didn't care about excuses. A lowly healer actually dared to challenge him. No way was he sharing a classroom with that guy anymore. He threatened to tell his rich dad and ruin the whole class. The professor tried to calm him down, but Ulpus totally cut him off. Do whatever it takes, just get that trash out of my sight. Ulpus stormed out. The professor sat alone, realizing cheating was risky. If he got caught playing dirty, he wouldn't get a pass like some spoiled rich kid. But hey, sometimes you gotta risk it for the biscuit. Some weak healer acting like he owned the joint. Plus, he had no clue what the other staff were planning. He wasn't letting this kid ruin his career. He decided to handle Will himself. After school, out on the training grounds, the professor cut right to the chase. He knew Will was feeling pretty cocky, and that definitely wasn't a compliment. The kid had skipped classes since enrollment. How was he making those up? Will thought about clapping back that those absences were entirely the professor's fault, but figured it wasn't worth the drama. Instead, he calmly explained he got notes from a classmate and self-studied everything. No big deal, right? But the professor didn't budge an inch. Skipping class meant mandatory makeup lessons, entirely up to the instructor, and his makeup test, a straight-up one-on-one duel against the professor. You and I both know how crazy that sounds, a professor fighting a literal student. The professor acted generous, saying because of their massive skill gap, Will just needed to land one single hit to pass. No running away allowed. What he kept to himself was way darker. With his elite magic, Will wouldn't even get close. He planned to beat the kid completely senseless to prove a point. After that, he'd force Will to listen. Will just shrugged and agreed. The professor smirked, powering up. Will recognized that magic instantly. It was earth manipulation. He dodged fast, but a strike dropped from the sky. He ducked, and boom, another one shot straight up from the ground. The professor sneered, asking if running away was his only trick. Will just stood tall, analyzing the whole battlefield. Unlike creating stuff, this style controlled the actual ground beneath them. That made it insanely fast with crazy attack angles. But hey, it definitely wasn't impossible to dodge. He leaped up, dodged the incoming strikes, and charged right in. The professor sparked another spell. Throwing up walls on both sides to trap Will in the middle, he grinned, but Will just wall jumped over them, weapon ready. Right as Will got in striking distance, the professor literally turned to stone. Will jumped back from the spikes. The professor just mocked him. Said he couldn't crack his ultimate defense with such weak power. An attack healer sounded like a bad joke and a totally cheap imitation. Trying to be a combat mage with pathetic magic was hilarious. Will stayed perfectly calm though. He'd studied human anatomy hardcore and realized something crazy. People actually live their lives unconsciously holding back their true physical strength, and the reason why is pretty simple. The human body literally can't handle its own maximum power. Go past that limit and your bones snap. The professor scoffed, thinking Will was just giving a science lecture because he was losing. Will calmly explained that breaking those limiters usually destroys a normal body. But get this, he is a healer. It doesn't matter if his arm completely shatters. The professor froze. Will stepped up with this wicked grin. He hated pain, but he could instantly heal himself right there. Time for a live demonstration. He launched forward with absolutely zero limits. Boom, a totally clean hit. The professor's glasses went flying. Will casually mention that arbitrarily setting limits on students was a terrible idea. So what do you and I take from this? Never tell this kid something is impossible, because he will just break his own bones to prove you wrong and become unstoppable. All right, stick with me here. Before finishing his sentence, Will suddenly spun around, dodging a wild strike from the professor. Now they stand face to face. The professor clutches his glasses, absolutely boiling with rage. Will casually mentions he thought landing one hit would earn his approval. The guy just yells at him to shut up. With nobody watching, his pride absolutely refuses to accept getting punched by a mere healer, so he goes crazy and launches a volley of stones. Will just smiles, mentioning that removing his limits isn't only good for throwing punches. He stomps the ground and rockets toward the teacher at insane speeds. The dude barely has a second to blink. His defensive stone wall is way too slow. Squeezing his eyes shut tight, he nervously glances sideways, wondering if the crazy dash is over, but he is totally paralyzed. The brutal hits just keep raining down in slow motion. Inside his head, he is desperately begging Will to stop. The agony is unreal, way worse than taking a normal punch. Trapped and unable to even scream, he silently prays for the nightmare to finish. Suddenly, he gets blasted backwards, smashing into the dirt. Will calmly walks over, claiming the whole beating took less than a split second. Still eating dirt, the professor demands to know what kind of freakish magic that was. Will smirks, saying unlike him, he can easily explain it. Right when the punch hit, he casts sensory enhancement on himself. It is typically just a basic healing spell used for poor eyesight or hearing problems. Now watch closely, this is where it gets insane. By boosting his reaction time, 1 single second stretched out into dozens of super slow moments. He literally just wanted to test how painful a punch felt in that mode. After asking if he passed, the defeated professor agrees. Then Will adds one final warning. He knows changing deep prejudice is tough, but if the guy keeps acting up, Will promises to teach him exactly how much agony a human body can actually process. He just wants to go to class without students bothering him. Can the professor guarantee a peaceful semester? Later on, pacing the grand halls of Schwarz Academy alone, the teacher is still totally mind-blown. He always thought healers were pathetic, weak support units meant to obey attack mages. But Will, totally different. The kid does not just have combat skills, he has serious killing intent. Alpus pops up, joking that Will is one step closer to getting kicked out. The shaken professor sharply tells him to shut up and back off completely. Underestimating that healer is a massive, deadly mistake, but Alpus whines, saying if he snitches to his powerful dad about this, the professor knows exactly what kind of fallout awaits. Surprisingly, the teacher basically tells him to go ahead and cry to daddy. He warns that if Apolpus runs to his father, he might be the one getting expelled instead of Will, so rather than his noble family making a big move. It looks like Will is the one who will be bearing his fangs. Opus is left standing alone. Frustrated, he punches the wall, cursing his awful luck. Fast forward a few days, Will is yawning in class, enjoying the peace and quiet. The teacher definitely warned Alulpus because the rich kid just glares at Will now without actually doing anything. This lets Will focus on studying, but sadly, it is not nearly enough. To rewrite humanity's grim future, he needs real power. Using healing magic for physical buffs is a smart idea. But honestly, he is just throwing brute force kicks and punches. Sensory magic works great for intimidating bullies. Now you and I both know basic punches will not beat real battle mages, right? He desperately needs fresh tactics, so he summons Veronica. Before starting, she has some news to share. Will asks what is up. She says the teachers are buzzing. For a healer to thrive at Schwarz, huge deal. Surviving these classes is a massive flex, even if most teachers are salty about it. Will completely expected them to hate on his success. He asks if she kept her coaching a secret. Veronica claims she isn't hiding anything. She just hasn't had time to tell the other professors about it yet. Will realizes she is basically a total outcast among the staff too, but honestly, he is just relieved. His progress is entirely thanks to her advice, and he would hate getting her into trouble. Veronica laughs it off, telling him not to sweat the small stuff. Plus, she is actually super grateful. Like she mentioned before, normal healer spirits are way too soft to ever test out these crazy, violent combat theories. Then she draws her blade, wanting to see a combat healer in action. Will nervously steps back, asking what she is doing. Veronica says she needs to test his current stats if he wants real advice. Will awkwardly replies that fighting her is a little too extreme. She yells that real battlefields don't have timeouts and lunges. Caught off guard, Will scrambles back, barely blocking her strike with a small dagger. Her raw power starts crushing him. She relentlessly pushes forward, dropping heavy blow after heavy blow, even with his magical speed boost. Will can barely survive. Up close, it is not just raw speed. Her moves are perfectly calculated to unleash an absolute hurricane of attacks. Relying purely on physical buffs has a hard limit. He has one single chance, that insane burst of speed he has been hiding. He has to catch her slipping. Channeling energy into his leg, he shoots forward for a thrust. Surprised but focused, Veronica precisely deflects his desperate strike. Drops low and perfectly snaps his weapon's blade off. Will stares in pure shock as the broken sword hits the floor. He exhales slowly. Sheathing her blade, Veronica admits she is genuinely impressed. She never expected to need her magic sword. Will notes she barely even broke a sweat. She figured he was just a confused healer trying to brawl, but his insane moves put him in a totally different leg. The kid has real, undeniable talent. Will thanks her. She adds that she loves his ambition, and he is right, pure physical effort alone is not enough. Will admits that pushing past human limits still has a hard ceiling. Veronica drops some wisdom. A sword isn't just for slicing. You can thrust it or even throw it. So what do we learn here? He needs new tricks. She points out his real issue, zero actual combat experience. All right, you and I are diving right back in. Will needs actual battles to test out his new ideas. She asks if he noticed something, should they keep training. Veronica says that is not a bad idea at all. Plus, a massive training exercise is actually coming up super soon. Will totally thinks it over. This totally rings a bell. A huge joint training exercise happened back in his past life too. It brings together the attack mages from Schwarz, the Hillig Healers, and the Silbern Sword Academy. Students team up and take on real monster hunting missions. He completely sat out last time at Hillig, but in this life, he is taking down monsters and rewriting the future. Time for his first real hunt. Veronica just stares at him for a second. Then she explains he has to prove his skills in the academy selection exam before anything else. Word on the street is there is a totally overpowered freshman prodigy right now. Will has to aim for number 1 before he even worries about that. Will asks how this exam even works. Veronica drops the bomb. Candidates literally fight each other. About 100 sign up and only the strong survive. Will processes the hype. It all comes down to raw combat. He figures not many people would volunteer to get beat up. But that super aggressive energy is classic Schwartz Academy style. It really brings back a ton of old memories. He wonders what his old mentor is up to. Veronica warns him that this hyped freshman prodigy has already crushed some teachers. Taking first place is absolutely not gonna be easy. Will guesses this kid is stronger than that one loudmouth professor. He asks if she has met him yet. Nope, some shady teacher hides him, so no questions are allowed. Will senses that is definitely not the whole story. She promises not to worry and helps him train. Will is super grateful. Now pay attention because here is where the real fun kicks off for us. Exam day arrives in a total flash. He prepared like crazy and now it is time. A familiar voice calls his name out of nowhere. It is Director Alnuram Goldran. He smiles, saying it has been a while and his granddaughter is doing great. Even though Will literally saved her life, the director felt bad they lost touch. He totally understands how crazy adjusting to Schwartz Academy must have been. Will admits it was a little rough at first, but he is completely fine now. Plus, he is totally gunning for first place in today's exam. The director chuckles, loving the bold confidence, but then a super nasty voice cuts through the air right behind them. It is a really angry professor. He calls the whole thing a massive joke. This kid wants first place. As the supervisor, he promises to teach punks like him a brutal lesson. Will recognizes him instantly. He dealt with this exact guy in his past life, the Purple Lightning Goat, a mage famous for huge feats in the Great War. Will absolutely hates this dude's guts. Goat keeps rambling, claiming combat is pure talent and hard work is completely useless. He says a weak healer like Will has zero chance. Will just glares back. Alnuram interrupts, telling them the exam is starting and results will do the talking. No point arguing right now. Goat smirks and mentions that the guy who is about to face Will is absolutely not messing around today. A dude with long white hair steps right up. Serious Blue T nods at the director. Will realizes, boom, this is the legendary prodigy he has to completely crush. They lock eyes and the tension is absolutely electric. Alnuram laughs at their intense energy, but says it is officially time to head inside the arena. Everyone marches straight into the massive arena. The crowds go completely wild as the fighters line up in perfect rows. Will spots Erica in the crowd and asks why she is even here. She sighs if she skips, her grades are gonna take a massive hit. Opus glares at Will with pure hatred. Will just flashes a smile at Erica, who clearly wishes she was anywhere else. Director Alnuram finally takes the stage, super hyped to see such a massive turnout this year. He hypes up the crowd, telling them to let passion guide their fists. He explains the preliminary round is going to be an absolute survival match. Whoever survives until the end advances to the main event. Will does the math in his head, 100 people brawling on a single battlefield, absolutely insane. Alnuram literally reads the room and tells everyone not to panic over the numbers. Then, he lifts his staff, and a giant glowing portal opens up. The floor turns into a glowing starry sky. Students panic, totally confused about what is happening. Alnuram just yells out that it is time to go. You and I both know this wild twist means pure chaos. Will spawns in a totally familiar forest, and a voice echoes right through the trees. The teleport spell literally scattered everyone completely randomly. The voice tells them to dodge the heavy hitters and team up. Where you start is pure luck. Will shakes his head, muttering that teleporting 100 kids at once is totally broken. The director completely ignores him and shouts that the survival exam is officially live. Will instantly leaps high into the trees. He hides his aura, completely erasing his presence like an absolute ghost, but right behind him, 3 students are already throwing down in an epic brawl. One guy sends his giant rock golem charging in. A girl rushes them with a massive glowing magic hammer, then a blonde dude blasts a blizzard, freezing them both solid. Will watches the whole thing like a hawk. It is the perfect chance to study their attack spells. Hiding the whole time would just be boring anyway. Plus, he wants to test out his own crazy moves. Watch this, the golem kid actually wrecks the other 2. He starts bragging super loud about his amazing golem, but before he even finishes talking, boom, Will teleports right behind his back. He grabs the dude's head and hits him with a mind disruption spell. The guy instantly drops completely unconscious and Will just stares. This crazy technique scrambles your life energy and forces a knockout. You have to grab the head, so you need to be way stronger to actually pull it off. But it takes out enemies with absolutely zero physical damage. Professor Veronica is gonna love this. Suddenly, Will dodges flying knives slamming into the dirt around him. So what do you and I make of this? Ulpus never learns and the guy just plays totally dumb. Alright, you and I are about to see this dude use everything he's got to pass. Behind Ulpus, two goons stepped up. One conjured magic knives out of thin air. The second guy coated those blades in poison. The third used shadows to multiply the toxic swarm over and over. Ulpus bragged that a single scratch meant game over. With that many flying daggers, Will's insane speed wouldn't be enough to dodge every single one. The blades flew. Will thought fast. He could just heal the poison away. Still, getting sliced to bits was a huge problem, even with his super strength. His healing glowed. Suddenly, a huge figure body blocked him. The rock golem tanked every single knife like an absolute boss. Ulpus was stunned. Wasn't that the defeated kid's summon? Will smirked, putting the pieces together. Healing normally ignores non-living stuff, but this golem was literally powered by its summoner's actual blood magic. He could not perfectly steer it, but blasting it with life energy worked. The beast charged the bullies. Bam! It totally flattened one goon and literally sat on the other. Ulpus started whining about his useless minions, but Will was already there. He grabbed his face. Lights out. Ulpus dropped. Meanwhile, deep in the woods, the golem tanked a massive water blast. Will watched from far away, totally hyped. His muscle buff only worked up close, but the golem perfectly covered that weakness. Plus, he had extra time to study everyone else's magic. Suddenly, a massive tornado ripped through the trees. Will frowned. Now what was this? The brutal wind rushed straight at them. Will leaped away just as the storm wiped out the golem and every student standing nearby. Now watch closely. Will landed and spotted Sirius pulling up. The guy was no joke, an absolute powerhouse that would not go down easy. Will debated throwing hands right there, but the director's voice boomed from the sky. Time's up. The four of them had cleared the prelims. Tomorrow was the main arena event. For now, they were totally free. The warp spell was about to beam them all out. Will locked eyes with his rival from afar. Sirius stared right back, not blinking once, until the magic completely flashed them all away. Will was hyped for tomorrow. Back in his dorm, he opened his notebook and jotted down some quick thoughts. He planned out his next moves before the big fights. Inside was peaceful, but the hallway, total drama. Some rich kids were complaining loudly. They whined that Will was ridiculously overpowered and even healed his enemies. They basically wanted to quit right there, telling each other to shut it. Those weak families just didn't get it. The Omen family had strict rules. Lowly healers never belonged with true mages. His dad would flip if a healer beat him. The guys traded a look, saying he could do whatever. But they refused to get wrecked again, so they ditched him right there in the hall. Ulpus was fuming. He did not even need magic to destroy Will. Will was cramming in his room when a sketchy late-night knock hit the door. His danger radar went off instantly. Boom, it was Ulpus. The dude smiled warmly, asking about the beautiful moon outside. Will cut right to the chase. What exactly was he plotting here? Ulpus claimed he just wanted a chill chat. Then, with insane honesty, he admitted he totally despised healers and confessed to framing Will multiple times to get him instantly kicked out. Will had basically countered all that nonsense anyway. He was honestly just sick of the games. The demand was crystal clear: drop out immediately. Will respected the brutal honesty, but seriously wondered why this dude was trying so hard to ruin his life. Ulpus snapped back that bullying healers needed zero justification. It was standard Omen family policy. Any healer born to them got tossed to the boondocks. His big brother was one. He just laughed off the bullying. To Ulpus, attack mages and weak healers were worlds apart. Will noted how toxic that elite family brainwashing was. Ulpus proudly and completely agreed. You and I both know Will isn't saying yes. Ulpus demanded he quit this academy. Will challenged him and Ulpus smiled, saying he'd force that yes. He mentioned Will's family. The servants already did the digging. They knew Will grew up with his sister in some remote village. He bet Will missed her. If Ulpus gave the order, what would happen to her? He left that question hanging. Stepping closer, the villain asked if Will was finally convinced to quit. Will said yep. Ulpus told him to pack. Suddenly, a massive hand locked around his throat. Will shoved him back, twisting his arm into an inescapable lock. Ulpus begged him to stop before it snapped. Will said his choice was made. Snap, the bone broke. Ulpus gasped, his voice coming out in fragments. Ulpus threatened that the school and Will's dad would freak out over a broken arm. Will just smiled, completely healing the injury. Ulpus looked up, totally confused. Relieved for exactly 1 second, until the second snap. Will broke it again. He promised an endless loop of healing and snapping until this bully genuinely begged. Ulpus begged. Will released his arm, his voice ice cold. Messing with him directly was one thing he could tolerate. But bringing his sister into this, that was a death sentence. Will told the noble to beg from the bottom of his heart while his bones were the only things breaking. Ulpus laid on the floor, absolutely traumatized. This guy wasn't a healer, he was a pure demon in disguise. He regretted ever messing with him. What awaited was way worse than death, and just like that, the crazy night finally passed. Will reminds Ulpus of his promise. No touching him ever again. Back in his room, Will stretches, feeling totally refreshed. And trust me, you'll want to see what happens tomorrow. Hours later, the huge main event begins. Alarm calmly watches from his seat. Bode and Veronica grab a spot close by. Meanwhile, Will watches the whole setup, realizing the final 4 from the prelims are about to clash in one-on-one showdowns. Still, he is totally shocked she actually survived the qualifiers. And stick with me here, because he turns around and boom, Erica is right there. She brags about spamming firewalls to survive without actually fighting anyone. Will thinks back. Sure, the attack mages rushed in early on, but just hiding behind fire, no way that kept her alive. Erica flashes a smile, asking her buddy to go easy. Will instantly says no way. She fires right back. That she survived the prelims all by herself and is gunning for a top score. Right on cue, a professor yells for the match to begin. Erica charges up a fireball and blasts it right at Will. He just tanks it with his arms, assuming it is standard fire magic. Normal burns, his healing handles that no problem. Honestly, he almost pities Erica since he is about to knock her out. But wait, suddenly he realizes something is totally wrong. This fire feels completely different. Erica chucks another fireball, warning him she is just getting started. Will dodges hard, then notices the absolute crazy part. The first flames are still burning him. Turns out this is Erica's signature skill, super sticky fire. The raw damage is pretty average, but taking hit after hit, even a healer like him is going to be in huge trouble. Seeing those fire walls before, he totally assumed it was just a side effect of that salamander tail. But nope, it was pure Erica. Now it makes sense how her defensive barriers were completely unbreakable. Honestly, that insanely stubborn fire matches her personality perfectly. The audience absolutely loses it. Everyone is screaming that she is actually going to crush the healer. For a split second, Erica doubts she can pull this off, but shakes it right off. Hey, she passed the qualifiers too. She glares at Will, demanding he just give up already. Will just brushes it off, casually saying he is about to counterattack. He heals his scorched hand on the spot. Erica charges another spell to finish him, but Will, he just smirks. Watch closely because this is genius. If her fire won't quit, he will weaponize it. Will charges forward with flaming fists, and Erica instantly throws her hands up, screaming she surrenders. She falls to her knees, and Will is declared the winner. He just sighs, thinking healers still get absolutely zero respect around here. The crowd starts booing Erica, screaming that a real attack mage never quits. Erica glares back, muttering that they were literally just cheering for her a second ago. She awkwardly apologizes. Will pulls her to her feet, telling her to chill out. He genuinely thinks she fought awesome and has a solid shot at passing. Her eyes instantly light up, but Professor Bode creeps up and ruins the vibe. He calls healers total garbage, meaning surrendering to one makes her worse than trash. She clearly failed, so scram. Will steps up, asking if a professor should really be trash-talking students like that. Bode snaps back that he is the supervisor, and if the fighters suck, well, he just walks away mid-sentence, leaving the insult hanging in the air. Walking off, he casually drops that only one person is advancing today. Suddenly, Sirius materializes right behind Will and starts talking. Will jumps, wondering when this dude even got there, and realizes he actually speaks. he asks Sirius if he agrees with Bode's nasty attitude. Sirius just shrugs, saying power is literally everything. Since Professor Bode is super strong, that makes him right. Will nods, saying he gets the logic. But Sirius adds that Will doesn't seem weak either, so he better prove it. Will just stares back, his expression turning ice cold. Sirius Blue Note vibes. Let that sink in for a second, because in Will's past life, he knew about an insanely overpowered wind mage up north. A kid his exact age who literally blasted entire landscapes into absolute nothingness. And in their ultimate showdown back then, Will took the win. Now, Will realizes that with Bode's toxic rules, grabbing the victory is the only way to get any respect. So yeah, he plans to win. Sirius simply nods. The professor yells for the match to begin. Sirius powers up his aura and fires a massive blast. Will dives hard to the dirt, kicks off the ground like a rocket, and charges straight at him. Sirius doesn't even flinch, swatting him away with a brutal shockwave of wind. Will throws his arms up to block. He is reading the patterns, but closing the distance is completely impossible. The two lock eyes. Sirius casually mentions that Will's speed is actually super annoying. Then, he charges up and unleashes another insane hurricane blast. Will clocks it instantly. This isn't a normal tornado. This is a pure knockback wave. One direct hit and he is getting thrown straight out of bounds. Time for the secret weapon. Will slams his hand into the dirt. Boom, a literal giant tree violently erupts from the ground, throwing up a massive wooden shield. Erika's jaw drops. That was healing magic. Will had seriously leveled up. With a cocky smirk, Will asks Veronica how his little trick looked. Veronica stares at the huge trunk, totally speechless, but Will jumps in first. He explains he pumped pure life force into the roots to hypergrow the plant. He read about offensive plant magic at the shop and figured he would test it out. Now, he's got wild tactics depending on the specific plant. Suddenly, his eyes roll back, collapsing right into Veronica's arms. She panics, but Will mumbles he is fine, realizing he totally drained his mana pool. The manual definitely skipped how exhausting this move is. Veronica sighs, pointing out the golden rule: destroying is easy. Healing magic burns massive amounts of raw power. And forcing nature to mutate like that is wildly inefficient compared to regular attacks. Will nods, realizing this trick is strictly a last resort. He never had the attack magic talent to balance the energy drain, but he forced his way past his limits anyway. Meanwhile, across the arena, Sirius simply raises a hand, firing wind blades that slice the tree clean in half. Will watches closely, downloading the patterns. A defensive knockback tornado. An explosive side blast, wind blades for heavy targets. Anyone rushing gets tossed by the vortex. It is a flawless defense with 0 blind spots. Now here is what you and I need to remember about Will. He refuses to stay weak. He lunges at Sirius, who coldly warns him that rushing in is completely useless. Will gets blasted backwards again, yet a huge grin spreads across his face. Sirius is confused. Then bam, a tree smashes his shoulder. Sirius is clueless. Will explains the trick. The wind guards the air, but the underground is wide open. Stick with me, you and I are jumping right back into the action. Plant roots spread everywhere. Sirius grabs his busted shoulder, while Will asks why he even cares about Professor Bode. They seem like total opposites, right? Sirius says Bode is super strong and trains him, but Will pushes back, saying he doesn't need that. He is from a top-tier family after all, but Sirius explains that in his clan, magic power is everything, nothing else matters. The strongest takes over and everyone else is just a target. Plus, get this, his own dad never even taught him magic. Will gets it, following the professor is just the fastest shortcut to leveling up. Then Sirius sighs, asking if they are done, because his shoulder is absolutely killing him. The crowd is stunned by how chill he sounds. Will just smiles, and behind Sirius, a massive wind dragon starts taking shape. Sirius says playtime is over and launches the beast right at our boy. Will knows this is serious. He has been thinking lately. Attack mages always pull their punches in practice. That is exactly why Will fights like his life depends on it. Talent or sad backstories don't make you better. Everyone has struggles. That is why he wants to crush Sirius right now. Sirius looks completely confused. You are going to want to see this. Will drops his absolute best seed. Vines explode upward in an instant. Will summons Yggdrasil, the literal world tree. Usually, growing this takes forever. and forcing it like this burns through an insane amount of magic power. But the more juice he pumps in, the harder it hits. The tree charges the dragon. The dragon rips the tree right in half and keeps charging. Sirius watches the wood chunks fly through the air. Suddenly they start glowing. He is completely lost. How is it still attacking? Well, smirks. This plant has crazy high vitality. Even one tiny branch will just keep growing endlessly. While Sirius was busy casting that dragon, his defense was wide open. The tree didn't miss. The ignoral slams into him dead on. Boom, Sirius hits the dirt. Will points a blade right at him and Sirius taps out. The announcer calls it. Will wins. The crowd goes absolutely wild. A healer actually beats Sirius in a one-on-one fight. Sirius stares at the floor, totally crushed. Will offers him a hand, saying good game. Just what you expect from a prodigy, but Sirius mutters he was too weak. Will is just confused. Suddenly Bode appears and zaps Sirius with straight-up lightning. The poor kid drops even harder. Bode kicks the branches away, grabs Sirius, and coldly tells him he failed. Back to basic training. The crowd starts whispering, talk about an insanely harsh teacher. Bode glares at the crowd, saying the same goes for them. He won't accept a healer in first place. Pure silence. Will thinks this is way too much. Yeah, Will won, but Sirius isn't weak. It was an epic match, and if they threw down again, Bode instantly cuts him off. He tells Will to shut his mouth. Good fights, future potential, total garbage. Out on the real battlefield, raw power is all that matters. Losers die like trash, end of story. Will can't believe he treats his own student like this. Then he finally snaps back. I know what you are thinking, a healer standing up to a master. Will says he proved his strength, but Bode flashes back to pinning Will down. Back then, Will argued healers don't fight, but they keep the whole team alive. It is all about teamwork or humanity goes extinct. Bode stays quiet, then speaks. His students held the front lines so others could escape. But those runners got wiped out by weak monsters anyway. The brave ones who stayed behind died for nothing, while the healers couldn't even reach the actual fight. Let alone save anyone. Because of absolute trash like that, Sirius had died. Bode clenches his fist, fighting back tears. Will agrees being weak means you are totally useless. But with monsters getting stronger, the heavy hitters can't be selfish. Will clenches his fist. People with zero power have to get stronger. Then he drops the bomb. If he beats Professor Bode, will he get respect? Bode just grins. He shouts that once a match starts, the weak need to back off. Deep down, Bode obviously just wants a real, all-out fight. But Will makes it clear he is setting the rules today. The announcer looks at Will, gets a nod, and sets up this crazy special match. Professor Bode versus Will. Bode cracks his knuckles, swearing to prove Will is absolute garbage tier. Will is running on fumes, and he is facing a total monster. Winning normally, not happening. He desperately needs to heal up first. But Bode is already there, mocking his speed. A massive purple lightning bolt lights up Will's face and hits him dead on. Bode casually lists 3 reasons he wins: distance to trap the enemy, speed to block reactions, and power for a one-hit knockout. Game over, he sighs like he is bored, saying Will probably can't even hear him right now. Will smirks, asking where that finishing blow went. He is still standing. He studied Bode's lightning. To survive, he redirected the shock away from his core, because if your brain fries, healing magic is useless. So he built a crazy blood circuit to move the electricity. Taking the hit through his arm and grounding it through his leg, he totally tanked it. Time for the counterattack. Bode just laughs. Sure, Will survived, but he is completely trashed. Will fires up his physical enhancement buff. But his mana hits 0 instantly. His body completely locks up. 0 strength left. Bode smirks, explaining his lightning has an absolute rule. So what do you and I learn here? Get hit, get paralyzed. But Will moves anyway. Bode just keeps smiling. Stick with me here, we're jumping straight into the madness. Will was doing fine a second ago, but bam, another bolt nails him. Watching from the stands, Erica is literally in tears, hands clenched. Will curses under his breath. Professor Bode is an absolute beast. His unique magic is flawless, completely justifying his insane level of arrogance. But our boy Will refuses to stay down. He wants this win bad. Pulling out his final seed, he declares this is his last shot. Activating his plant manipulation, he screams for the tree to sprout. Boom, an aquatic treasure tree shoots up right in front of him. Will knows it sucks up massive amounts of groundwater to act as the ultimate shield. It's supposed to scatter the electricity. Bode shouts, demanding to know what that thing is. Honestly, Will looks completely shocked, right along with the other students. But Bode, he just casually slices the whole tree in half. Will realizes he is totally cornered. The professor struts over with a smug grin, asking if that was seriously his final play. He calls ending on a defensive move totally pathetic. But wait, he spots something next to the tree. Weird mushrooms are rapidly sprouting all over the smashed wood. He mutters, "What even is this?" Will is absolutely hyped his crazy plan actually worked. You see, certain plants and mushrooms hit a massive growth spurt after getting blasted by lightning. When a forest burns down, they pop up first since there's zero competition. This mushroom is exactly like that, but it packs a hidden trick. Bode stares down at the fungi, looking totally weirded out. Suddenly, the professor's face drops. His body is losing its strength. This is the exact opening Will wanted. Channeling all his energy, our boy blitzes forward at a terrifying speed. But Bode just smirks. He unleashes a lightning-charged punch right into him. Will coughs up blood and hits the dirt hard. Calling him an idiot, Bode does not even look back. He brags about dominating in close combat since his unique magic freely controls electricity. By supercharging his own body for insane speed, a little paralysis means absolutely nothing. Will is stuck on the ground, frustrated that his epic combo still was not enough to secure the win. Now watch closely, things are about to escalate. Bode declares victory, raising his sparking fist. Suddenly, a blade points right at him. It is Veronica, standing right behind the professor with her sword drawn. She firmly tells Bode he took this way too far. The professor just lets out a super annoyed sigh, warning her not to interfere. He calls her just a newbie, but Veronica claps back that the match is over and hitting him again is pointless. Bode argues the kid has auto-healing and can totally keep fighting. Veronica is not backing down. She points out Will's magic and stamina are completely drained. Bode complains she is ruining his vibe, prompting Veronica to flare up her own crazy energy. Bode instantly matches her aura. They step up ready to throw hands, but then a voice shouts to stop. Alnaram drops down from the sky, floating briefly before hitting the dirt. He looks right at Bode, calling their little standoff completely ridiculous. He orders them to stand down, and the principal's intense glare leaves zero room for anyone to argue back. Bode clicks his tongue and looks away, finally backing off. Alnaram then turns to Veronica, apologizing for not explaining the whole situation to her earlier. Clearing his throat, he stands tall and officially declares the main event of the selection camp is over. He dismisses the crowd, and the students start pouring out of the Coliseum. Meanwhile, Will is trying to heal his own injuries, but curses his completely empty mana pool. His recovery is super slow, and he hates feeling this helpless. Before he can force it, Veronica straight up carries him in her arms. He totally freezes in shock. She praises his effort and tells him to rest. Will is completely left speechless. He finally nods, replaying her kind words in his head, but he still feels like he failed. Later that night, our boy is just lying awake, lost in deep thought. Bode showed the true skill of a top-tier combat mage. It wasn't just about throwing raw power around. The strategy was insanely refined, on a level Will could barely comprehend. And the scary part, even with absolute monsters like Bode, humanity still lost everything. Will knows he needs a major level up. Next morning, he knocks on the office door. Alnaram welcomes him in. When asked about his condition, Will explains that his injuries are totally fine. Once his mana recharges, his body just heals itself up automatically. The principal smiles, saying he is cleared for the training camp. Since Will actually won the main event, he is definitely going. Oh, and Sirius and Erica passed the test too. Will looks confused, pointing out that Professor Bode literally said everyone failed the exam. Alnaram just gives this sneaky little smile, revealing that happens every single year. Yep, it is a complete setup. Telling the class they failed is just a trick to spark some serious urgency. It forces the students to grind harder and break their limits. You and I both know anime teachers love their weird tests, right? In the end, most kids pass anyway. Will finds it pretty bizarre, but considering his past life, it checks out. Back then, Bode was an absolute legend, fighting on the bloody front lines until his last breath to protect humanity. Even if he hated the world, he still defended it. That harsh attitude, just his twisted way of teaching. Alnaram drops the details. Will is becoming an offensive mage, teaming up with kids from other academies. their main mission, heading out and taking on some heavy-duty monster hunting quests. This is huge. It will be Will's first time fighting actual monsters since traveling back in time. Let's not forget, exactly 5 years from this moment in his previous timeline, monsters literally wiped out humanity. Originally, the word monster just meant any animal with mana. They weren't always evil. Sure, they'd attack people sometimes, but that was just basic nature and survival of the fittest. Honestly, they were basically just wild neighbors. But in roughly 2 years, that entire balance is going to completely shatter the second the red moon shows up. The beasts go absolutely feral. Different species start teaming up like an army, hunting down humans for absolutely no reason other than pure, brutal bloodlust. 2 years later, the Demon King drops in. Humanity is instantly crushed, and entire nations are wiped off the map. The heavy hitters, combat mages, got slaughtered left and right. Knights dropped like flies. Even the backline healers, who usually stayed super safe, got totally consumed by the absolute destruction. Will himself died too. Barely anyone who took up arms survived. In just a few months, humanity hit game over, but our boy refuses to let that nightmare repeat. He has to become ridiculously strong, way beyond anyone from his past life. He needs enough raw firepower to solo entire monster invasions. Plus, he needs to uncover whatever actually caused that cursed red moon. Alnaram watches him, smirking slightly. He notes Will has that fiery determination, the exact same eyes from their first meeting. The principal assures Will he'll be fine, hinting the staff are super careful about selecting the training grounds. Then, he mentions he has something important to tell Will privately. Will has no clue what he means. Outside, he regroups with Erica and Veronica. While chatting, more people show up. So what's our boy's next move? Trust me, you'll want to see what happens. All right, stick with me here. We've got some serious training to wrap up with Sirius and Professor Bode. Bode stepped closer, looking tough as nails. He told them flat out that weaklings who can't land a hit shouldn't be acting cocky. Will thought the professor was exactly the same. Bode told them to take that lesson straight to the battlefield. Will thanked him for helping Sirius out. Sirius agreed, acting pretty quiet, before throwing a genuine smile and saying his thanks. Because of that strict vibe, he could fully focus on leveling up his skills. That was just Professor B's classic teaching style. Will drop some wisdom. As long as you survive to get your payback, it's not a loss. Sirius flashed a real smile, giving Will a solid fist bump before heading to the carriage. Having more heavy-hitting mages around was totally a win. Will promised himself he would tip the scales when the monster battles kicked off. Veronica called out that it was go time. Inside the carriage, she broke down the actual mission details. They were hitting the Dunnel Forest. The job, wipe out the local goblins. Teams were mixed, 3 students from different academies. Schwartz, Hillick, and Silburn, plus 1 teacher acting as backup. Erica wanted to know if the squads were already locked in. Veronica confirmed they were teamed up together. Erica figured that beat riding with total strangers, even if Veronica made her slightly nervous. The professor dropped a hint that Will's squad had a weird twist, but they were already there. Time to check out the Silburn kids waiting outside. Now pay attention because things get wild. A girl shouted his name, sprinted over, and tackled him with a huge hug before he could react. She said she had been waiting forever to finally meet him. Will immediately turned beet red. Hold up a second. He had absolutely no clue who she was. She stepped back, completely unfazed, laughing that it made sense since they never actually did introductions. Smiling bright, she announced herself as Marie Goldrin, granddaughter of the big boss at Schwartz Academy. Will's jaw literally hit the floor. He just froze, wheels turning in his head. It was the sick girl he had treated. He never expected to see her here. He asked how she was holding up. Marie said she was amazing, apologizing for not thanking him properly back then. Will waved it off entirely. Her grandpa had hooked him up with a spot at Schwartz, so they were even, but Marie stubbornly shook her head, wanting to repay him. With 0 magic skills, she joined Silburn and went all in on sword fighting. She laughed, saying she aced the exams because she was naturally cracked at fencing. Will was mind blown. From stuck in a bed to rank 1 in the exams in record time, her talent was seriously off the charts. Marie grabbed his hands. She told Master Will he could totally count on her, stoked they got grouped together. Will smiled, saying they would crush it as a team. It finally clicked what the director meant by counting on him. Suddenly, Marie spun around, noticing the Hillock students had shown up and said they should say hi. Erica whispered that their squad looked pretty solid, and Veronica totally agreed. The vibes were already incredibly good. Marie looked around for the last teammates, wondering out loud if Master Ren and Turf were there. Will froze hearing that exact name. A door swung open and a guy stepped out telling everyone to chill. He introduced himself outside as Master Ren. You and I both know how crazy fate is, right? Will felt his chest tighten up. This guy was his mentor from his past life, hands down the absolute best healer he had ever known. He celebrated internally at being on the exact same squad. Behind Ren, a super nerdy dude walked up. Complaining that the professor was slacking, Marie called him Master Turf and said hello. Turf acted polite, but his eyes locked right onto Will and Marie holding hands. He asked who Will was, dripping with obvious snark. Turf mumbled under his breath about Will being just some offensive mage from Schwarz. Ren casually stretched and announced this was the squad. He told them to do whatever they wanted while he just kicked back and watched. Marie scowled, super confused by his lazy attitude, but Will knew his old mentor was always exactly like this. He stepped up, asking if he could call him mentor. Ren raised an eyebrow, totally curious. Will explained he had healing magic but never had a real teacher, so he wanted to learn from the absolute best. Ren was genuinely shocked, an attack mage who also heals. He realized he heard rumors about this, guessing their team-up was definitely set up on purpose. When Will asked if that was cool, Ren just shrugged, call him whatever he wanted. Marie instantly declared she would call him that too. Turf tried to argue but got ignored completely. Erica and Veronica shared a look. This squad was already way too buddy-buddy. Every squad got their own zone, using a cabin as home base. The actual goblin turf was way deeper inside the woods. Usually healers stay way in the back, hanging at base camp, but Marie pointed out that Ren was a healer tagging along to the front anyway. Ren fired back that as a supervisor, the rules were different. He told them not to worry about him. Marie promised to back him up so he wouldn't hold them down. Will agreed that was huge. Suddenly the goblins ambushed them. Marie swung her massive blade, clearing enemies with insanely wide, powerful arcs. Every single strike landed with crazy heavy impact. When the dust settled, a huge pile of wrecked goblins surrounded her. Will stared, remembering the sick girl in that bed. How did she even get here? Her sword style was pure, raw power. She could probably solo the whole zone herself. She yelled out about a huge swarm coming. Ren just crossed his arms. Impressive, but way too many blind spots. She was a beast on a fence, but easily surrounded. He told Will to cover her. Will nodded, pumped to finally face off against some actual monsters. Trust me, you're going to want to see this fight. Ren told Will to drop the tension in his shoulders. Surprised, Will relaxed and agreed. Let's jump right into this timeline. Just like before, Ren noticed everything. He fired off a magic circle, followed immediately by physical enhancement. He rushed in fast, leaping between monsters. He sliced them up and guarded Marie's back like it was absolute child's play. I got you, he grinned. Marie totally agreed. Seeing combat healing in action up close was wild. Not bad at all, Will thought to himself, completely hyped up inside. It completely wrecked the monsters. The special knife Professor Veronica handed him packed a totally different punch than Alpus's blades. Way cleaner, super precise. You are balancing explosive strength and sword skills perfectly, Marie praised him. Super impressive stuff. All right, we are done here today, Ren declared, walking away. Let's go, Marie randomly noticed she felt way lighter. Will smiled, crediting their awesome mentor. Ren's healing spells triggered for critical injuries, but his true flex was pure speed. It was so insanely subtle that nobody even realized they were healed. Non-healers completely missed how god-tier this technique was. Will actually asked him about it once. I am not trying to show off, Ren told him flatly. As long as you are healed, who cares? Will stayed quiet, knowing the world was totally clueless. Ren Kaido's was straight up the ultimate healer. Back at the cabin, Ren gave them a glowing review. Awesome work today, guys. We all survived without a scratch, so I basically did nothing, Turf joked. Cooking healing meals is totally a healer's job too, Ren replied warmly. You nailed it, plus that secret sauce of yours was absolute fire. Marie gushed about how epic the professor was. not just a healer, but a frontline tactical genius. Treat enough field injuries and you naturally pick up combat basics, Ren brushed it off. That explains why the professor skips normal classes, Turf chimed in. He is always out grinding in the field. Isn't that super dangerous? Marie asked. I am highly confident in my running skills, Ren joked, while quietly kept eating. Now pay close attention here. In his past life, losing this mentor doomed humanity, not just because he was a god-tier healer, but because he was their absolute best combat tactician. This time around, fate could totally be rewritten. Luckily, that tragedy was still a long way off. Will stared at his bowl, finishing his soup. In this life, zero chance he lets his mentor die. The squad kept vibing the whole night. Deep in the woods, a shady figure handed the goblins the insane power of the red moon. Instantly, the monsters went totally berserk. A massive goblin locked onto our squad. The next day, they went back to monster hunting. After reviewing their last fight, their teamwork was absolutely popping off. At this speed, they would finish early. They kept pushing until Ren suddenly froze. Let's head back. Why? Marie looked super confused. We literally have not seen a single monster yet. Exactly, the professor warned. It is way too quiet. Goblins are fiercely territorial. They normally attack outsiders instantly, like yesterday. We walked miles with zero encounters. What the heck is going on here? Will asked, getting stressed. I have no idea, but always trust your battlefield gut. We are retreating today, and once we hit base, we are calling in some heavy backup. I completely trust Professor Veronica's squad, Marie suggested. Their camp is close. Good call, Ren agreed. Let's roll. Will hung back while everyone advanced. This bizarre goblin behavior was setting off massive red flags. Up ahead, Marie shouted that they were finally hitting the road to the neighboring camp. Will desperately tried ignoring his past life trauma, but then he froze. Erica was lying right there on the ground, tied up and totally knocked out cold. Marie sprinted forward with zero hesitation to play hero, but the second she stepped up, the dirt collapsed right beneath her boots, a literal pitfall trap. Pure instinct kicked in. She stabbed her sword into the dirt wall, barely stopping herself from falling into the abyss. Watch your step, guys, she screamed. They totally used Erica as live bait. Incoming, Ren yelled. A storm of arrows rained down, but Will went sicko mode, deflecting every single shot with his blade. Red-eyed goblins rushed them immediately. Marie scrambled out of the hole while Will quickly scanned the absolute chaos. Now I know what you are thinking. This coordination is way too advanced. Will realized it was the red moon buff, which wasn't due for 2 whole years. Will felt sick. Was the nightmare starting early? Suddenly, Erica groaned from the dirt. She was actually still alive. No time to panic now, though that relief totally grounded him. We are wildly outnumbered, Marie yelled. At least she survived. Will slammed his hand into the dirt. I got this. Giant roots exploded upwards, spawning wooden guardians that boxed the goblins out completely. Will told Marie to fall back from the front line. With archers stuck in the back, picking them off would be a breeze. She could perfectly line up her ultimate strike. Marie braced herself and unleashed absolute hell, shattering their formation with one devastating blow. How was that? She smirked, but a sneaky goblin lunged at her back. Bam! Will sniped the monster's neck before it even touched her. I will watch your blind spots. Amazing job, guys, Ren cheered. I am grabbing the hostage. Do it, Will yelled, but terrible dread instantly crushed his chest. Something felt completely off. The red moon was only supposed to make monsters angry. He knew that part, but nobody expected the massive beast rising from the earth, a freaking ogre. This thing was camping underground, teaming up with goblins thanks to the moon's buff. Will was way too far to assist. It was a brutal replay of his tragic past life. He simply could not protect everyone at once. The ogre's massive fist plummeted toward Ren, but Ren pumped his magic, dodging the lethal smash by a literal millimeter. Will completely froze in shock. His mentor had actually mastered the offensive combat healing he had showed him. The beast swung again. Ren cleanly ducked, launched himself into the air, and landed right on its neck. Lights out, he whispered, blasting the ogre with a raw mental shockwave. The titan instantly passed out, slamming into the dirt like a meteor. Ren landed perfectly behind it. Will walked over, absolutely mind-blown by that insane combo attack. That is where you and I leave it. A true master learns from his students, Ren smiled. Will felt incredibly proud, and Marie was completely blown away. All right, stick with me, we are diving straight into the madness. Ren frantically unties Erica, yelling that they need to bolt immediately. Meanwhile, Will actually thinks their overpowered mentor could solo everyone there. The wooden golems are barely holding the line. Ren totally snaps, telling Will to stop acting stupid. See, he only knocked the ogre out. As a dedicated healer, he completely refuses to actually hurt the massive monster, which is honestly pretty wild. Once the spell fades, the beast will be fine. Will totally respects his soft-hearted vibe. They immediately slice their way through the nasty goblins and bail. After absolutely wrecking a few chasers, the rest of the monsters finally give up. Will says they can catch a breather, while Ren uses his healing magic to wake Erica up. She blinks awake, completely confused, asking where she is. Marie reassures her, and Will feel super bad for grilling her the exact second she wakes up. But he desperately needs to know what happened and why she was stranded alone. Erica clutches her head, remembering that yesterday's monster hunt actually went totally fine. But they missed a few stragglers. While the squad was grouping up, everything went totally wrong. Professor Veronica literally vanished. Will questions that, and Erica nods. The professor just left a super sketchy note telling them to wait for her. But Erica freaked out, got into a massive screaming match with the other two, and chased after her alone. Will figures they totally guilt-tripped her into doing it. And she just couldn't say no. This isn't a joke, guys. One single mistake and she literally would have lost her life. Nobody was prepared for that insane gap in levels. Erica says she stepped into the forest, smelled something crazy sweet, and then boom, she woke up right here. Ren realizes the goblins are packing some heavy sleeping gas. Setting traps and teaming up with a huge ogre is super weird, but they seriously lack time to analyze it. Their camp has to be close, and they desperately need to regroup, but on the way back. Now pay attention, this is where everything shifts. Erica freezes in pure shock, staring straight ahead. Their base is completely wrecked. Marie admits she totally called it. Goblins are super territorial and never leave their zones. Going further away should have been perfectly safe, so she really wants to figure out the actual reason behind this mess. Will points out that monsters going full aggro is pretty normal during the red moon, but honestly, there's no solid way to explain any of this right now. Ren spots zero signs of a struggle, meaning the guys totally ran off somewhere. He volunteers to go scout for them. Will, Erica, and Marie need to grab turf and ditch the forest. The squad agrees without a second thought. Ren yells that the base isn't safe and to stay hyper-alert. They sprint back. Will frantically checks if Turf is all right. The kid just complains dinner isn't ready. Marie praises him for staying safe, making Turf blush hardcore. Will promises to explain everything later, but they seriously gotta bounce right now. Suddenly, he stops dead. His fist clenches tight. The giant ogre is right in front of the house. The absolute unit tracked them down. Erica totally loses it, panicking about what to do. Will drops his voice, admitting he's been acting insanely pathetic up until this exact moment. Erica has literally zero clue what he means. Will steps up, declaring he is taking this giant beast down, and he fully believes they can win. Against a massive mob, perfect teamwork is everything. Marie needs to save her energy and only drop heavy hits, letting the wooden golems absolutely tank the front line. Erica needs to roast the incoming goblins with her fire. She bitterly mutters that she's totally useless since she got captured so easily before. Will shuts that down, calling her flames totally clutch. Shocked by the random hype, Erica gulps hard and blasts massive waves of fire right at the goblin horde. A blazing wall of fire erupts. The goblins slam the brakes, totally terrified of the crazy heat. Erica cheers, super relieved her magic actually worked. But Will spots major trouble. The ogre just bulldozes straight through the fire barrier. This absolute unit is clearly on a completely different level. Will commands a wooden golem forward and screams for Erica to blast it. The golem wraps itself tightly around the ogre and bursts into furious, blazing flames. The monster shrieks in absolute agony. Will signals Marie and charges. Catching his drift instantly, she channels all her raw power and literally yeets the giant ogre away. The massive monster violently crashes into the dirt. Marie hypes up their flawless combo. Will totally agrees, but the celebration abruptly ends. You saw that coming too, right? The beast stands up, its massive stomach gash instantly healing right before their eyes. Marie asks if they should just keep swinging. Will shuts it down. Spamming attacks is risky, there's no guarantee that'll work. They desperately need a smarter strategy. Before he can even think, Erica screams a warning, Will blocks a heavy hit. The giant ogre is literally using the goblins as organic dodgeballs. Will swats the flying monsters away, joking about the world's most annoying projectiles. Erica frantically yells that more are incoming. Marie casually deflects a goblin with her sword, boldly declaring she's returning the favor, and literally hurls the monster right back. She knows Will is cooking up a crazy plan, so they'll completely cover the little guys. Will pushes forward, trusting his squad. The group splits Erica, and the golems unleash massive area attacks to hold the horde. While Marie bats away the flying goblins, Will rushes the main boss. The huge monster glares down, sweeping its deadly claws in a brutal low strike. Will smoothly dodges, countering with a lightning-fast flurry of dagger slashes. The ogre goes absolutely berserk, roaring loudly. And the wounds just heal right up, but Will instantly appears behind the beast. He mocks its massive openings, proving it was all a distraction. He slaps his hand onto the back of its neck and triggers life overload. The beast's heart violently spasms, pure agony tearing through its entire body. It screams in pure terror before literally exploding from the inside out. Will casually steps down from the messy remains with a cocky grin. It totally makes sense. Its crazy healing was totally broken, sure, but life overload absolutely melted the beast from within. With zero body left, there is literally nothing to regenerate. Now only the scrub goblins remain. And yeah, it literally takes seconds. Will slices one apart, the head rolls, and it's finally game over. Marie celebrates the flawless dub, pulling them both into a massive hug. Will praises the team's epic combo, and trust me, you and I just witnessed absolute peak coordination. All right, let's jump right back into the madness. Will cuts the celebration short, everyone's still in danger. Suddenly, a massive gust of wind rips through the trees. Our boy recognizes it instantly. Sirius, if they just follow that massive tornado, they can finally regroup. But right now, Sirius is completely frozen, totally drained after unleashing that crazy power. Will checks him out, yeah, he's holding up just fine. Honestly, everyone's just super relieved nobody got wrecked. But then Bode suddenly points something out. He's totally confused by this weird squad lineup and asks where the heck the instructor is. Right on cue, Ren pops up like, yo, we're right here. Will sprints over to the master, super hyped that he found them. Ren just smirks, admitting that giant tornado was basically a giant neon sign. It totally gave away their spot. He gives Will major props for pulling it off without a single scratch on anyone. Erica starts cracking up. Bode totally kills the vibe though. Wait, someone is definitely missing. Will realizes it's Professor Veronica. Bode shrugs it off. She's a total beast, so she's probably fine, but they absolutely cannot just ditch her without saying a word. Ren steps up, saying he'll keep an eye on the students here. He double-checks if the other professor can hold down the fort while they split up. The professor gives a thumbs up, so serious, and will head out to track down Veronica. Will tries using his super hearing to scan for life signs, but yeah, he hasn't leveled up that skill enough yet. He's gotta do this the old-fashioned way, and honestly, it doesn't take long at all. He spots Veronica totally unharmed, but wait, something is way off. She's tightly gripping a glowing red moon crystal. Suddenly, she snaps her head back, Will completely freezes. Watch closely, this is where it gets sketchy. It's that exact same light. The professor quickly hides the crystal, demanding to know why he's there. Will plays dumb, claiming he was just searching for her. He mentions the monsters are acting completely unhinged and that the training camp is basically over. Veronica just nods, super casually, and says it's time to head back. Will stops her. He straight up asks what the heck that stone was. The professor totally brushes it off as nothing, but our boy pushes harder. He demands to know what she was doing out here while the students were literally fighting for their lives. He needs answers. Veronica finally opens her mouth, quietly saying she's sorry. But she keeps her methods a secret and heavily hints he should just keep his mouth shut. Will lets out a heavy sigh. He can totally feel her intense aura. The professor promises she isn't doing anything evil and tells him to chill out. Honestly, he's completely backed into a corner here. He desperately wants to push it, but he's just too weak right now. Plus, doubting Veronica hurts. In his past life, she was a ride-or-die comrade, and just like that, the crazy training camp officially wraps up. Later that night, Will is wide awake. He just can't stop wondering, is Veronica actually working with the Red Moon? She never acted shady like this in his first life, so he decides to spy on her. Catching her chatting with another professor, Will pops his stealth skill and creeps in close. The other guy mentions she filed a request to leave campus and asks where she's headed. Veronica just coldly walks past him, dropping a blunt, "It's personal." Will's brain goes into overdrive. This absolutely has to do with that freaky red stone. He literally has zero choice, he's tailing her. Veronica heads straight into the city. Will shadows her every move. Yeah, he totally rushed into this blindly. If he's wrong, he's basically just a creepy stalker, but that nagging gut feeling is impossible to ignore. Especially when he might actually uncover something massive before history repeats its tragic self. Plus, if there's even a tiny chance to prove Veronica is innocent. He absolutely has to find out. Man, it's his first time back in this city since his past life, back then, right after finishing up at Helig Academy. The monster invasions got completely out of hand. He was drafted straight to the front lines, zero free time whatsoever. Well, at least that's how his fuzzy memory plays out. Up ahead, Veronica hits up a street stall, buying a simple bread roll from an old dude. Will watches and bam, nostalgia hits hard. He vividly remembers sharing that exact food with her. Completely on autopilot, he buys one too and takes a massive bite. Oh man, it slaps. Veronica suddenly smiles, casually saying this spot is absolutely top tier. Caught off guard, Will stammers that he's a country kid and never really bought street snacks. He asks if it's a habit, since she basically grew up in a wealthy merchant family. She nods but says it runs way deeper than that. With life being so crazy unpredictable, she made an absolute rule for her own life. If she sees a bakery, she goes in, period. It started as a kid traveling with her parents and carried right over to her brutal days leading armies on the battlefield. She's crossed paths with endless people. And most of them never saw them again. Even the ones who survived and crossed paths later had changed so drastically, they felt like complete and total strangers. She refuses to live with any regrets, completely throwing out the concept of saving things for later. Will slowly nods, admitting that actually makes a ton of sense. That's exactly why everybody loved her. Snapping back to the present, Will grips his chest, feeling that heavy guilt. In his previous life, he totally let Veronica die. I know what you're thinking, he's not letting that happen again, but first he needs the ugly truth. Veronica suddenly ducks into a dark alleyway, Will stays locked on, trailing from the shadows. Realizing he's slipping up, he cranks his stealth skill to the absolute max. Deep in the alley, Veronica finally stops dead in her tracks in front of a mysterious figure. The guy claims he's been waiting, dropping a quick sorry for the shady meetup spot, but says it's urgent business. He pulls back his hood, demanding to talk about the special item they previously agreed upon. Veronica pulls that freaky glowing stone out and hands it straight over. The guy grips it with both hands, totally freezing up before practically shaking with insane, pure hype. He yells that it's an absolute masterpiece. He praises her crazy talent, saying she's exactly as brilliant as he always believed. With this rock, the sketchy church's ultimate goal is finally happening. They're going to drag the red moon even closer to Earth. Those terrifying words hit Will like a truck. Mind blown, everything is totally connected. The moon, the rock, this cultish church. But in his pure shock, Will's focus totally shatters. His stealth skill violently rips apart. Veronica catches it instantly. She whips around, sword already drawn and swinging. Will barely has half a second to react. All he can do is scream out her name in panic. Veronica glares at him, so he really did follow her. She stands there, totally, completely guarded and hostile. The creepy dude in the back sighs, acting all fake disappointed that she didn't come alone. He shakes his head, super sad that she broke their little secret rule. He actually thought he was recruiting a brand new powerhouse for their dark, twisted order. Veronica coldly tells him to just chalk it up as an accident. The guy smirks, fine, then she can kill Will to prove her loyalty. So what do you and I think? Is Will surviving this? Let's jump right back into the madness. Will waits tensely, but Veronica straight up refuses. She's only here to investigate, not to sacrifice a student. Will apologizes, but he really needs to know what the heck is going on. Veronica sighs. Yeah, she admits this mess is entirely her fault. She should have come clean earlier. Back in the forest, she sensed something totally off. She found a berserk monster and right next to it, a mysterious red stone. She describes this super creepy vibe when she picked it up. The second she pumped her magic into it. Boom, blinding red light. That's when this shady guy showed up, saying that finding someone with her crazy potential out here must be some kind of divine setup. He wanted to prove his mission was actually worth it, but Veronica just demanded his name. The guy claims he'd love to chat, but rules are rules. If she wants the truth about the stone, she has to agree to two conditions. First, keep that rock glowing. That proves she's qualified. Second, tell absolutely no one about the location they give her. He apologizes for throwing a wild test at her, but says he really hopes she joins their ranks. So yeah, that's why Veronica came snooping. Figuring out the mystery is way better than letting a disaster happen blindly. Will points out that her story still has some massive holes. Veronica totally agrees and says sorry, but Will, he's just super relieved. At least his teacher isn't secretly evil. The mysterious guy sighs. Her interest in the order was a total fake out and he's super bummed. He tosses the stone away, hating to waste such insane talent. Now watch this closely. Will spots the exact same stone flying through the air, and before anyone can even blink, it starts glowing like crazy. Instantly, the surrounding monsters go absolutely feral. Then, 8 massive water dragons burst right out of the lake. The guy hypes her up, saying awakening that much raw power is super rare. These dragons are tough. Veronica counts 8. Will casually offers to solo half. Hard pass before he finishes, she says it isn't needed. Veronica dashes in, using sword magic to slice all 8 heads off instantly. Will mutters that this is exactly what he expected from his teacher, but she stays fully on guard, glaring right at those dragons. The heads hit the dirt and then they twitch. Will asks if he's crazy. Veronica confirms it, decapitated but totally alive. How is this crazy regeneration even possible? Surviving without a head and 0 healing magic. Yeah, something is seriously messed up here. One dragon charges Will head on. He dodges, whips out his knife, and slashes the beast. He already knows this thing's skin is built like absolute armor. Will grabs the beast, yelling he needs to test a crazy theory on this one. Veronica gets it, but warns him not to go totally overboard. Will promises it'll be super fast. He completely unlocks his physical limits and launches forward with absolute max leg strength. He grabs the head with both hands and yanks. But wait, not a head, it's a massive Kraken tentacle. Veronica figures it out instantly. We totally got tricked. It wasn't regenerating because it was never a head. It's an octodon's soft body, totally deceptive form. The monster actually talks. It praises Will for exposing its true form so fast, since the order doesn't even score combat ability anyway. They technically can't eliminate him, but whatever, it's going rogue. Introducing itself as Allroot, the creature swears to crush both of them personally. Will glances at Veronica, asking if she can solo the beast. Honestly, her flashy sword magic is way better against this weird thing than his attacks. Veronica agrees to his plan but refuses to risk a student's life. Will just grabs her hand. He triggers his physical enhancement, promising to come right back after completely wrecking Allroot. She just needs to stay out of danger. Smiling, Veronica calls him totally reckless. She agrees but gives him one major warning. That shady guy definitely has some dirty trick up his sleeve. Will is stunned. She reminds him he already proved the impossible today. He charges. Allroot notes his insane speed. Then Allroot taps his chest, claiming he's fast too. Will lunges with the knife, but the mage perfectly blocks it. Unexpected, Allroot mocks his crazy talent. They jump back to reset. The mage notices a fresh slash on his face. It stings, but he just heals it. Watching closely, Veronica explains that the red stone leaks a passive mana flow, acting just like raw offensive magic. Basically, Allroot is a combat healer. Will demands to know how he learned fighting methods for healing magic. Allroot smirks, he actually didn't. Just by watching Will fight, he literally copied him, like Will was his personal tutor. Will realizes this was an ancient combat style for healers. How overpowered are these guys? Allroot admits Will is clearly a natural-born genius, and honestly, he's super jealous of that crazy talent. He's dying to meet whoever trained him. Then he casually asks if Will wants to join up with their super-secret order. Absolute joke, Will vows he'd never join that trash, not even in his next life. Suddenly, the healing magic in Allroot's hands glows blood red. Allroot acts shocked. What a huge shame. He charges, declaring he'll end Will right here. Will barely blocks the hit with his dagger. Allroot's physical boost is insane. The order, the red stone, mixing healing and attack magic. It's totally broken. So much makes zero sense, but Will plans to beat the answers out of this guy. Maybe then he can actually stop the coming tragedy. Will deflects the staff, spins, and kicks the mage flying. Allroot catches himself on his staff, casually admitting that, yeah, he might actually lose this. But he's got the order's backing. He triggers something nasty, body corruption. One eye flashes red, and his arm twists into this gnarly, monstrous shape. Allroot calls it magnificent. Trust me, you and I know this is way beyond any basic healing magic. Things just got seriously real. Stick with me here, this gets wild. Will demands to know who taught Allroot. The mage credits the order's teachings. Before them, his life was painfully boring. Going through the motions. He used to be a basic healer for magic units, just taking orders from snobby elites day in and day out, but working as a healer. He paid attention. He realized the world was packed with trash who absolutely didn't deserve saving. Then the order gave him power, an awakening. Suddenly, Allroot felt like a star. Will tells him straight up, whatever epiphany he had, it's totally messed up. If this guy keeps going, way too many innocent people are going to drop dead. Allroot just slaps his own totally gross, mutated muscle. He says everything is perfectly fine. The order wanted it exactly like this. Bam, he launches Will across the alley like a rag doll. Will smashes into the wall, coughing up blood. Allroot creeps closer, bragging that justice always wins. Will just thinks. Because of an empty shell like this guy, his little brother, teacher Veronica, and so many others had died before. Suddenly, Allroot stops dead, totally shocked. He has no idea how Will is still on his feet after taking that much damage, but something about Will is completely different now. Will just starts healing his own arm. The deep cuts close up instantly. Allroot is absolutely losing his mind. Everything healed in seconds. What kind of insane recovery is this? Will stares him down, no forgiveness. He swears he's going to make Allroot experience pure agony, way worse than death. The mutated mage charges right at him. Now watch closely, things get crazy. Allroot screams he'll kill Will before he can even heal, but Will explodes forward, smashing that monster arm with everything he's got. The impact sends Allroot sliding backwards. Will tells the guy to hold his screams because the beatdown is just getting started. The mage barely even processes how insanely fast Will is moving before, crack, a brutal uppercut nails his jaw. He flies up, smacks into the alley ceiling, and drops down completely out cold. Will stares at the knocked-out body. Yep, Allroot is done for now. He decides to handle him later, then turns his attention back to teacher Veronica, still fighting that huge kraken. She focuses up and unleashes a massive flash magic sword strike. Whoosh! The giant monster gets sliced perfectly in half, plopping to the ground like two giant pieces of sushi. Veronica notices Will is already done with his fight. The monster had some crazy strong regeneration. So taking it down took a minute. Will agrees the kraken was tough, but then he casually grabs Allroot, slams his face hard, and pins him against the brick wall. He shoves a knife right against the mage's cheek. Time for some answers. Allroot groans, giving in, but literally begs Will to stop making such a terrifying face. Will says that depends entirely on him. He's got questions. What exactly is this messed up cult, and what the heck is their actual endgame? Allroot smirks, a true believer never snitches. Then, out of nowhere, he jams his own dagger against his throat, shouting that he's giving his life to the cause. He yells, "Long live the cult," and slits his own throat. Will just freezes. Tears stream down Allroot's face, proud he sacrificed himself to hide their dark secrets. He was the ultimate fanatic. He truly believed his soul was heading straight to Lord Claudio's paradise. But wait, suddenly, Allroot's fading mind starts getting super clear. He realizes the fatal wound is completely gone. Allroot mumbles in total confusion. He knows he slashed his own windpipe. The freezing pain was 100% real. Will admits that stunt actually surprised him. He totally underestimated the guy's crazy faith. But hey, he healed him up. Allroot freaks out. Impossible, he literally just died. Will just shrugs, he can heal through death. Allroot screams that no normal healer can pull that off. Will smirks, he isn't normal. He's going to be the absolute best healer alive. You and I know what this means. Will drops the ultimate threat. If he can pull someone back from the edge of death, he can also torture them to that exact point over and over again. Allroot suddenly gets the picture and is absolutely terrified. Will calmly asks if he's ready to spill. The mage realizes he's trapped, but right before he talks, something hijacks his brain. A creepy voice literally commands him to die. Pure panic takes over his face. He drops to the dirt, bawling, completely locked out of his own body. Will stumbles back, totally stunned. The guy is just dying. Veronica screams for Will to back away. This is super bad. Will jumps back. Allroot's body literally starts dissolving into black smoke. The two shield their faces as the guy just rots away right there. Will dives toward the ashes, desperately throwing healing magic and yelling for him to hold on. But it's game over. Allroot's entire life force got deleted in 1 second. It was a crazy strong curse, totally irreversible. Will mutters to himself, wondering who really runs this cult. Veronica checks if he's all right. Will nods, but he's super salty. He lost their only lead on the cult and blames himself. Veronica shuts that down. He survived, and that's enough. Time to head back to the academy. Walking back, Will brings up how that weird redstone just shattered out of absolutely nowhere. Veronica warns that the cult and the stone are way too dangerous. Just knowing about them puts a target on their backs. Will totally agrees. He realizes that compared to his past life, he's actually making huge progress. But is it enough? Meanwhile, Veronica admits she's honestly really glad he joined her out in the field. She fought the director to bring him along, and honestly, having Will there helped her spot something huge. Will nods, totally getting it. Veronica only realized his potential in this timeline. He takes the opening to ask, why does she use attack magic when she's a healer? Veronica explains she grew up in a merchant family. She spent her whole life watching healers and attack mages work side by side. Maybe that rubbed off on her. Will points out if it were that simple, Mana science would be way ahead by now. Veronica just shrugs. She can't fully explain it. Someone just told her something back when she was little. Just a super vague feeling. Will secretly wonders if that mystery person is tied to the cult. Veronica suddenly drops the heavy talk, offering him some bread. Will is stunned, then laughs and agrees. Mysteries are everywhere, but he finally grabbed a real clue to stop the future destruction. So where does that leave us? Will gets grounded. But meanwhile, across town in a fancy mansion, some noble drops dead instantly. Two nasty vampire punctures right on his neck. A creepy voice confirms the kill, then says she's next. The girl just sighs. She'll obey if it's an order. Straight from the cult.